Hello and welcome to Let's Talk, a Tulsa World virtual town hall meeting. I'm Wayne Greene, editorial pages editor of the Tulsa World. Today's town hall is graciously underwritten by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, TTCU Federal Credit Union, and OSU Medicine. Today we're going to talk about the impact of the COVID-19 infection on the economy and local and national efforts to ease the pain of people who've seen their jobs and businesses hurt by the situation. Joining us today are U.S. Senator James Lankford, Oklahoma Employment Security Commission Executive Director Robin Robinson, and Tulsa Economic Development Corporation CEO Rose Washington. Welcome all.
Good morning.
These are very challenging times. I'd like to start by giving each of you a chance to offer whatever thoughts and encouragements you have to those who have seen their lives disrupted by the COVID-19 shutdown. Senator Langford?
So obviously we've all seen pretty dramatic effects. It's interesting to note at this point that about a third of our state is working in healthcare areas and trucking and grocery stores and convenience stores. They're working harder than ever. They're facing people coming in to be able to buy products that are essential. They face real risks. We've got another third of our folks that are working at home. They're working very different. They're working with their family. They're homeschooling as well as trying to be able to maintain their business. And then about another third of our folks that are right now have nothing else going on. They're home, asked not to be able to get out, but they're working in retail and restaurants and hotels, and they're not needed, and they're trying to be able to go through unemployment, sometimes for the first time ever. And they're also facing the challenge of just being home stuck and not being productive. So it's odd. We talk a lot about the people that are at home, but we have a lot of people that are literally working harder than ever to be able to be engaged, and they're coming home from very long days with a very difficult shift, driving right past people that have been at home all day. And so it's a weird dynamic force going on in the state right now and just culturally.
Rose Washington.
So I think, Wayne, what first comes to mind for me is that we've all been reminded of a very simple lesson in Economics 101, and that is that we're really all interconnected, and when demand and supply are out of balance, when money stops flowing in and out of households and in and out of businesses, local economies feel the pain quickly and more severely. And so over the last week and a half, all hands have been on deck to give comfort to small business owners who really undergird our community, giving them advice and access to resources and good counsel, and really a compassionate ear to let them know that we're all in this together and that they are important and that we're going to do all that we can to support them through this process and come out much better and stronger on the other end.
Robin Roberson?
Yeah, I think just to kind of echo Rose, we've seen a lot of people come together. I believe that we were starting to see the trend of the energy crisis starting to hit, right? So at the very beginning of March, we just had our typical claimants of around 1,500 to 2,000 and started just seeing that massive influx of claims right when both kind of in an imperfect storm, if you will, here in the state. So we've seen a lot of people affected with this historic job loss at OESC, unlike any other time. I would say that our agency also provides workforce service programs. So one thing I'm very excited about is looking forward to the day when everyone's ready to start getting back into the labor force. We had a big strategy call this morning on some plans to start doing that virtually now. So I'm excited and hopeful that we'll have those type of programs in place. So people who are affected by this and unable to work, we can at least provide those type of training tools for them. And of course, also for people to know that these benefits will be retroactivated to specific dates as their eligibility. And so I just want people, offering those words of encouragement as we're looking forward to the future.
Senator Lankford, you were one of 8 U.S. senators who voted against the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which is one of the 3 relief bills that have passed Congress so far, and all 3 have been signed by President Trump. What do we need to understand about that vote?
Yeah, Wayne, it's a great question because there were 3 bills and we lose track of that because they came 3 weeks in a row. The first bill I supported that dealt with the increased testing, that development of a vaccine. That was $8 billion. We now are in human trials in 2 different vaccines now, with a third about to come online. Testing has dramatically increased from what we saw at the beginning of March. So that was very effective. The second bill was more controversial on what it did to small businesses. Right as governments were asking small businesses to close down, this added a new burden on small businesses to say they had to, when small businesses had no cash flow at all, had to come up with additional cash flow to be able to pay a mandatory sick leave. They'd be reimbursed by the federal government, but they had to come up with the money first. What I heard from small businesses over and over and over again is, we don't have any cash flow right now. We can't come up with that and hope that there'll be reimbursement. This will push us over the edge, or we will push all these folks out into unemployment. And the constant comment that I heard is, if we don't get people to be pushed to unemployment insurance, we need to be able to do something to help us get assistance first. The CARES Act did correct that. It actually got the assistance of small businesses first, and then put the requirement on payroll. So what I voted against in the second one, we fixed in the third one and said, let's not force small businesses to come up with cash they don't have right now to be able to help cover people. Let's do an advance of the money to them, and so then they can cover their employees. So yes, I did vote against the second one. I would do it again. I think it did prematurely push a lot of people out into Robin's world and trying to be able to deal with unemployment insurance, that we pushed people much faster into that than we should have, when we could have given that aid from the third bill to actually help the small businesses and other entities be able to keep their workers there and to be able to keep them connected to it. Unemployment is a great safety net at this point, but we are not built for the number of people that are coming into unemployment right now. Keeping people connected to their jobs long-term is a better strategy, and that's what we're trying to do in the CARES Act.
Rose Washington, you've been in the leadership of the Tulsa Business Resilience and Recovery Fund. Tell us about the purpose of that fund and who's eligible for help from it.
Wayne, thanks for asking that question. And I will tell you, on April 1st, Mayor G.T. Bynum announced the creation of the Tulsa Business Resilience and Recovery Fund, seeded with a $1.1 million investment from Vision Funds. And the intent of the fund is to help small companies in Tulsa better absorb the shock of COVID-19. As a community development financial institution, TEDC has been the ideal partner since we're in the business of providing progressive lending to promising businesses. But the goal of the fund is really to help the community retain and sustain small companies to the fullest extent possible by providing a stopgap source of loan funding up to $50,000 to local businesses with zero fees, zero interest, and no payments for at least 3 months. And so this is a great complement to the SBA programs that have been rolled out, the PPP program, the Payroll Protection Program, as well as the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program that SBA offers. Based on my experience and partnership with SBA, I do understand that a lot of local small companies will not either be eligible for those funds or not receive a sufficient amount to really support them through the closure. And so the R&R, which is what we're calling the Resilience and Recovery Fund, is really here to support those businesses that don't meet all of the standards and expectations of the SBA. And so to be eligible, the business must operate in Tulsa. It must be for profit. It must have been in business by or before July 1st of 2019, because this is not a fund for startups. The company must pay W-2 wages to non-owner employees. They have to have fewer than 50 employees, and contract employees don't work, or contract workers don't qualify. They should not be eligible for more than $150,000 in the SBA's PPP. They should have under $5 million in revenue as of 12/31/2019. And of course, a lot of folks have not filed their business tax returns for 2019. And so we're looking at financial statements for the year ending 12/31/19. And this is a really easy one. They must have demonstrated financial hardship due to COVID-19. And I think every business really on the face of this planet has been affected by COVID-19. The last important thing to note is that a business that has excess liquidity of, say, $100,000 plus or 2.5 times the loan amount really should not apply, because we feel that they have a source of working capital that is available to them, and we're encouraging people to use their own resources unless they need to borrow. We are using eligibility standards regarding industry per SBA requirements. And of course, there are some businesses that are not eligible for our funds. And so if you think about those who are in the business of selling cannabis products, they're not eligible. And there are other forms of businesses that I think are given that wouldn't be eligible for any funding that TEDC would offer normally, nor would we offer through the R&R fund.
Are you getting a good response? Are you getting a lot of people lining up for the help?
I tell you, Wayne, I am much more sympathetic to the SBA now and the bottlenecks that they are encountering due to the influx of need and applications that we are all experiencing. So I will tell you that in addition to the R&R fund that was established, we also set up something called TulsaResponds.org, which is really a help desk for small business owners. And it was established with support from the George Kaiser Family Foundation and Atento Capital. And so we set this up with volunteers who were there to provide resources to businesses who were just calling for help. And since April 1st, we have interacted with over 1,100 small business owners, sometimes on more than one occasion. And TEDC has received over 160 applications for funding. In a normal year, we process 150 to 175 loan applications in a year. And in under 2 weeks, we have touched over 160 applications and have dealt with over 1,100 inquiries. And so, does that answer your question, Wayne?
How do people, how do they reach out to you? I mean, what's the, is it a telephone? Is it a website? What's the means of connection?
So people are applying on our website at tedcnet.com, and there's a special disaster form there that starts the process. And people are also emailing and going to TulsaResponds.org, because it has really been the first point of contact where people can get resources on all available funding and all available programs, including some grants that we're finding, as well as the best, assessing the best program for funding that is available to them. And so we're starting through TulsaResponds.org. Of course, our website is always up and available under any condition, but either entry point into the loan process works.
Robin Roberson, the Employment Security Commission has faced an unprecedented challenge here, trying to deal with an extraordinary number of people applying for relief at the same time that you're dealing with some huge technical problems and just the pandemic itself within your own agency. Can you give us a status report on applications at this point?
Sure, I'm happy to. And yes, you're correct. We have seen historic claim volume. So prior to COVID, our largest claim volume for 1 week was a little over 9,000. That was our pre-COVID historic volume. And now last week, our unofficial number for last week was a little over 60,000. We're seeing this, I'm sorry, the week prior. Last week we saw closer to 50,000. So we did see a decline there. I'm very excited about that, but we have processed close to 200,000 claims over the last several weeks. So if you can imagine our staff, the thing with Oklahoma is we've really experienced and been very fortunate to have a low unemployment rate, right? So even the last kind of dip in the recession, we weren't as affected as much as other states simply because our oil and gas kind of helped carry us through that. So it's been a long time since we've had to have the type of knowledge or training or the staff volume to handle a large number of claims. So we had to really work hard to shift and reallocate some of our other staff members to help us with this claim volume, and of course give them kind of a crash course in training. And then again on the phone lines, we had, prior to this, we only had 30 VPN connections. We had to work to get all of our staff to be able to work remotely. So we really had to overcome a lot of challenges in a very short amount of time. And I feel very happy in the progress that we made. So this morning we had over 600 agents answering calls. So we were able to work with different state agencies for that support. So we're really, if you can imagine, we went from 11 people on the phones just a few weeks ago, and now we have over 600. So we're making progress. We're headed in the right direction there as well.
Do you have a timeline for when you hope to be up to even?
No, because we have no idea what the next few weeks will hold. I mean, we receive warn letters. We kind of understand who plans on letting people go. So we're still seeing quite a few of those coming in. I was hopeful that last week with that small downward trend that would continue. We're seeing quite a few this week already. So, we are unable to anticipate what the increased volume is. And you have to also remember, each one of these claimants have to go in and refile each week. So there's that compounded stress on our servers, compounded stress on our phones, people needing that additional support every single week. So as the claim volume comes in each week, just think about that each week, it's added on to itself. So we're hopeful that we have a really smooth process by the end of next week. Like I said, we perform training all over Easter weekend. We continue to add more agents. We have about 186 volunteers from other state agencies like the Department of Transportation, the State Auditor's Office, Department of Human Services, and those people are being trained on our Tier 2 support. So we're adding those every day. We're trying to add about 15 of those people to the pool so that they can answer those more complex specific questions. So you have to also keep in mind that our tax code here in the state's very complex. And that's one thing that we'll be working towards providing some new language and proposing that for the next session, is to kind of help us in that area as well.
Senator Langford, Rose Washington described the local effort to help small businesses. Of course, the big money is coming from the federal government. Can you tell us what programs are out there for companies that are trying to stay above water and keep their people on payrolls? And what are the eligibility requirements there?
Yeah, so there are several elements that have been done. Obviously, the checks for $1,200 that are coming out to individuals, those will start going out this week. Some have already received those. There'll be an acceleration of that over the next several days. If individuals have a direct deposit relationship with the IRS already, whether it be they're a Medicare recipient, they have a Social Security disability, they're on a Social Security retirement, or they've done a refund in the past in 2018 or 2019, those monies will be direct deposited, and that'll start accelerating, as I said, the next several days. So that's one for individuals. Second part is obviously the unemployment insurance that Robin's already talked about. There's both an extension of the number of weeks for unemployment. There's an additional $600 per week for those that are on unemployment. But the big focus that we really have is what we call the Paycheck Protection Program. That's something that was mentioned earlier as well. That program is for small businesses. It's a business of 500 employees or less. It's a for-profit business, a not-for-profit entity, or even a faith-based not-for-profit entity. It's open to anyone. It treats all employers the same, not trying to say we're going to discriminate on the type of business you are, but just saying, hey, you are an employer. So whether you're a faith-based entity or a non-faith-based entity or not-for-profit or for-profit, if you employ people, then you're eligible for this. You can go to any bank. When you go to the bank, you don't have to go through a special SBA anything, but just be able to say to the bank, I need to sign up for the Paycheck Protection Program. They can get you the form. It is a really straightforward form. You have to show that you were in business in February of this year and what your payroll is for a typical month. then the grant that's given to businesses is 2.5 times their 1 month payroll. That allows them to be able to pay their payroll for 8 weeks for everybody, and then also allows a little extra money for utilities and for lease payments to be able to help keep them above water in lease payments and in utilities. That's to help us get through the heat of the storm at this point. We don't know what's coming and how long this will last, but we know we have at least this period of time on it, so it allows us 8 weeks. I really do encourage small businesses, 500 employees or less, not-for-profits or for-profits, to contact a local bank to get this Paycheck Protection Program. This is why it was set up, is to be able to help people not have to go to unemployment to stay connected with their job. It does really the twofold purpose we were trying to accomplish. One is to keep small businesses alive after this is over, because they still have a relationship with their employees. They're not having to try to gather everybody up from unemployment, and to be able to come back, they're still connected there. And the second one is it gives real sense of permanence to those employees as well, that they're not worried about, is my job going to still be there? Do I have to go back and reapply? They're still getting their paycheck through their normal system. They still have their same health care. They would still have their same retirement benefits. All of those would stay consistent because it's all covered in this Paycheck Protection Program. It is $350 billion. Already $2 billion plus has been allocated just into Oklahoma. We've done over 700,000 businesses and not-for-profits already across the country. So a lot of people have already taken advantage of this. And I would encourage folks to take the next step. If you're a sole proprietor, you would also be eligible for this, just like you would be if you're another small business. So whether you're farm and ranch related, whether you're energy related, whether you're a restaurant or a hotel, whatever it may be, a retail entity, I'd encourage you to contact your bank to be able to find out how to get this Paycheck Protection Program. We set it up for the banks because we knew unemployment offices would be crammed, as they are all around the country right now. So doing this process through the banks, through a typical SBA system that they already have set up there in the banks, did create some headaches the first couple of days. But what it does is within a couple of days creates thousands and thousands of locations for folks to be able to connect with, rather than a relatively few, because we literally have thousands of banks all over the country that all of these small business owners and leaders of not-for-profits can connect with. So very important to go get connected. Do it sooner rather than later. We are talking about an extension of that program, but for right now, there is no guarantee of an extension. Focus in on what we have right now and go get connected to a bank right away, so we can make sure that we get your business some stability for the next 2 months.
Sandra, I've seen friends post on Facebook that they've gotten their relief checks have shown up in their bank accounts, but where I'm also getting emails from people who are watching today's town hall who say, hey, we keep hearing about this massive federal relief, but it's not showing up. What's the timeline there? And it's hard to be patient when the rent's due and you've got a family to feed.
Yep, it's middle of the month, and some folks have already contacted entities where they're paying rent to and saying, hey, I can't cover it. And so that $1,200 is very, very significant. The $1,200 is being sent out, like I said, individuals that have a connection for direct deposit, it's going to go out first because that's where the money could go out fastest to be able to do that. Then they'll follow up. It has already started out this week, and so it'll take several days to be able to get that money out for direct deposits, then continue to be able to watch their account. Their target was April the 15th. Obviously, they beat that just a little bit by them starting yesterday even, but they're trying to be able to get it out as fast as they possibly can to be able to do that. If they don't have a connection for direct deposit, go to irs.gov. There's a coronavirus logo, and all of us know what that little virus looks like now. Click on that logo, and the economic recovery message is there. You can get a chance to be able to click on a brand new portal they just started this week to say, hey, I don't know if IRS has connection with me or not. Here's who I am. If you have a social security number, your income as a individual is $75,000 or less. As a couple, that'd be $150,000 or less. You will get a check for $1,200. If it's a couple that makes $150,000 or less, that's 2 checks for $1,200 each. To be able to come back and forth. If you have a child 17 years old or younger that's a dependent, that is an additional $500 for each of those individuals as well. So that'll come. Now, if let's say your household income is higher than $150,000, it starts phasing out after $150,000. By the time you get to $200,000 of total household income, it's gone entirely. So this is really targeted towards the folks who need the help the most, is how it's targeted. So if individuals have more than a $200,000 household income, they won't receive a check at all. But for those folks that are $75,000 or less, they'll receive the full $1,200. And again, that'll come in. If you don't have their relationship, irs.gov, go to the portal that's there and be able to get your information for direct deposit, your social security number, and so they can know this is really you, and then they'll start going through the process from there. There's also going to be a portal open up next week on irs.gov, that same spot on the coronavirus updates, that you'll be able to track your own check. If you've not received it yet, it's not been direct deposited, and you don't know what the process is on it, you'll be able to type in your social security number, and it will help you track when that will be deposited into your account.
Robin Roberson, I had some very specific questions from readers, actually more than we could ever address today, but let's try to get to a couple of them. One reader was very concerned that people who work in barbershops or beauty parlors aren't eligible for unemployment compensation, even if that's their only means of support. Another was concerned that the federally funded relief and unemployment compensation that people receive will be federally taxable, and that if people don't know that, they're in for a really expensive surprise a year from now when their taxes are due. What can you tell us about those two issues?
Sure. So on the independent contractors or those kind of businesses that were forced to close down due to COVID, they should be eligible for unemployment assistance through the CARES Act. Now, those people who are typically not eligible, for example, the hairstylist, the salons you were mentioning, we are still working on our programming there. We're hoping to test this Thursday for a live production for next week, but go ahead and have those people apply. They'll receive a denial message because they, of course, aren't eligible right now in our system, but they'll be logged in our system, and then we will let them know as soon as we have everything ready to go that they'll start receiving those backdated benefits if they're eligible. So there's about 13 different types of criteria for eligibility. So we'll want to make sure they meet those. Regarding taxes, all unemployment benefits are taxable. And the claimant has the ability from the very beginning, there's a box they can check that says, would you like for us to withhold these taxes? Because some people really need that extra few dollars, right? So if you're really desperate, you don't want taxes taken out, you want to try to pay that later. But everyone has that opportunity to have it withheld, and then they of course can go and update their profile anytime if they change their mind. I would say that people that owe back taxes and those that also owe child support, you will have that taken out of any kind of benefit that you are administered. So just keep that in mind as well. But as far as the taxes go, everyone is, they have that, and it's in their hands, the control's in their hands to go ahead and withhold that. And of course we suggest that, but some people may really need that extra small dollar amount.
Senator Langford, there's talk of an additional congressional action, a fourth COVID relief bill. What do you want to see on that?
So let me mention one other thing just backwards on that $1,200 check. That is not taxable. The unemployment benefits is taxable as it always is. It's a replacement for income, so that is a taxable entity. But the $1,200 that's coming out to individuals, that is not taxable. And so that I wanted to be able to help clarify, because those are two different things that are out there.
Yeah,
a fourth bill is being, fourth bill is being discussed. And one of the things I look at a fourth bill is what was missed in the previous three bills. There's already conversation to say, for instance, well, let's double the amounts on all these different amounts that was already given. This was a $2 trillion bill. It was the largest bill in American history that was done. About $1 trillion of that is loans, that money will come back. For instance, it was a delay of when people would pay their taxes, especially for businesses. They could pay their taxes much later so they could have better cash flow right now. So we know that money is still coming in. It'll come in later. For the largest businesses, those are loans that are going out that by law they have to be repaid. But about $1 trillion of that is in grants or help to the small businesses. That's money that's going out directly to help small businesses. There's $100 billion that's going out towards hospitals, for instance. There's $150 billion that'll be going out nationwide for states. Our state will receive $1.5 billion in assistance to be able to walk through this. To give you a picture of how big that number is of $1.5 billion, our total state budget is $8 billion. That's an enormous number for our state, and it's all related to COVID related expenses for our state. So those dollars are in the process of going out. The state and local dollars, that'll be coming some to Tulsa County in particular, and then some to the state. Those dollars will have receipts attached to them, basically to say, here are the expenses that we did for COVID, and then we'll be able to turn those in and be able to get a rapid turnaround on dollars. There's some folks already saying, I want to double all that. I've said, time out. This is an enormous bill. Let's identify what needs are out there that are not being met or what was missed. So let me give you, for instance, the Paycheck Protection Program allows not-for-profits, 501c3s, to participate in this, whether they're faith-based, non-faith-based, for any of those not-for-profits. But if you're what's called associated, if you're connected like a community foundation, you're considered a large nonprofit, even though you're a small nonprofit, just your funding entity or your connection for administrative is larger. Well, that's a mistake in the bill. That needs to be fixed so that we allow not-for-profits that are connected to community foundations to still be able to participate in this program. That's something I've already brought up to leadership. We're trying to be able to work through the process to be able to help fix if there's another bill. There are other areas that are like that we look at and say, okay, what are we doing? One may be for entities that have rent facilities or apartments or whatever it may be, because those entities, there wasn't specific language on that. There was language to help individuals pay their rent. But for many individuals, they've said, hey, we can't do it for a couple of months. We don't know what it is. We're just trying to buy groceries and stay alive at this point. We got to be able to make sure that at the end of this, we don't have individuals kicked out of their place where they live, but we also allow those entities that do rent to be able to help cover that. That's another area that was a gap in the bill that as we worked our way through to be able to get this out the door as quickly as possible, we could have missed. So for a fourth bill, I'm not looking for a big giant bill to be able to come up. Again, I'm looking for what were the gaps of things that were missed in the previous version and how do we get through this? And ultimately, we're targeting getting more testing, getting faster testing out the door as we're doing right now. Oklahoma has tens of thousands of tests available for COVID-19. Now we're trying to accelerate into the faster test. It's the 15-minute test rather than the 36-hour test to be able to get done, to continue to be able to advance treatments, and then ultimately a vaccine. Because in the CARES bill, we did something very unusual. We actually put the production of the vaccine simultaneous to the human trials to the vaccine. So that way, if the trials are successful, we already have the vaccine in place and we can move on it much faster than we would typically be able to do. So the target on this is getting our economy going, getting healthcare treatments in place. If there are areas of gaps on that, we need to be able to address that. In the meantime, the stopgap on the economic side, we need to address the gaps.
Senator Langford, there's in looking through the questions that were submitted to us for today's event, there's just an enormous amount of anxiety and fear out there just in general. And I think people want to hear a story of a better day coming from their leaders. As we're concluding, can you paint a picture of a realistic economic recovery for us today?
So let me paint a couple, both better days and current days. I have heard thousands of stories of people that are taking care of their neighbors, that are literally walking down the street to a senior adult individual that's down the street they don't even know, but they knew they were there, finding a way to knock on their door, get away, and they just say, what can I do? Can I get you groceries? Can I help you? We're connecting with each other in a very different way. There are online resources that are literally connecting people. Where is there a need? How do we meet that need? So in some ways, this is bringing out the best of us as we're frustrated with all being trapped in some ways, or for those individuals that are a third of our economy right now that are working harder than ever at great personal risk. So there's a lot of that out there as we're watching people find ways to be able to serve each other. As we get on the other side of this, this is a very different type of economic downturn. This is based on a government action to say we've got to be able to protect each other, and individuals saying, hey, I don't know whether I have the virus or not. I've got to find a way to be able to protect someone else. And so that isolation, once that turns off, that allows us to be able to re-engage. The big challenge that we have right now is testing. And let me give you a glimmer of hope in this. The tests are getting faster. They're getting more frequent. It's going to help us more to be able to not have 14 days. If we remember that, to say, if you think you were exposed, go spend 14 days in isolation. Now we can go get a test. That 14 days has gone away of just isolation. Now we can know within a day. Within a week or so, we'll be able to know within 15 minutes. That's going to help everyone dramatically to be able to know, okay, do I have it or not have it? And by this summer, we're going to have the capability to be able to take a quick finger prick blood test and to be able to tell, did you have the virus? Because a lot of people had it, had no physical effects, but their bodies have developed antibodies for it. And so they're able to be able to fight it off. They're able to get back into the economy very, very different now. That test is also coming on board by the millions. When that occurs, people will be able to re-engage in the economy better. We're very hopeful for the summer, though we don't know. Previous coronaviruses have died out in the heat of summer. It did for SARS, it did for MERS. Both those were coronavirus types. We're hopeful the summer heat, if in Oklahoma we ever get summer heat nowadays, but we're hopeful in the summer heat that this will push back this virus significantly and we'll be able to get on top of it during the summer. So there are some optimistic things: increased testing, increasing speed of testing, less isolation based on that, availability to be able to see antibodies to see if my body's already fought it off and I'm immune so I can re-engage in the economy, and then the summer heat coming. But in the meantime, I honestly say we really are praying for each other, and we really are watching out for each other, and we're watching God do some pretty remarkable things through us and around us, even in the middle of all of the struggle that's happening.
Thank you, Senator Lankford. And thank you too to our other guests today, Robin Roberson of the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission and Rose Washington of the Tulsa Economic Development Corporation. Thank you to our viewers too for watching today's town hall meeting. Please join us next week for our 5th Tulsa World Let's Talk virtual town hall, which will look at the efforts by local nonprofit organizations to help Tulsans survive the COVID-19 shutdown and the challenges that the event faces them financially. I'm Wayne Greene, editorial pages editor of the Tulsa World. Goodbye for now.